Yeah, so I would say that yarning circles is probably the biggest one.
Mm,
As I mentioned, like there's not a huge number, at least in Australia, of Indigenous psychologists doing
yeah.
Indigenous psychology research.
Mm,
So I have a lot of colleagues who are in psychology adjacent disciplines. Actually, a lot
yeah.
of like people, like a lot of Indigenous former psychology students who then when they finished didn't see a place for themselves in psychology and so now work in adjacent fields. But what they use is things like yarning circles or even just like storytelling sort of interviews. So yarning circles, but just with one person or with an
Mm,
elder or something like that.
yeah.
Another really important one is participatory action research. So where we collaborate with Indigenous communities throughout the research process. Hopefully students would have come across the term nothing about us without us. And so if you are doing research on, and actually it's part of the national ethics statement now, but if you're doing research on or about Indigenous peoples, it needs to involve Indigenous peoples, and there's different levels of quality of that. And so the best is participatory action research, which often involves a community organization or something actually reaching out to the researchers and then being involved at every stage of what that research looks like.
Mm. And I think in the psychology adjacent fields, you're probably thinking of like social work and counseling, or are there other fields that come to your mind?
A lot of health like based researchers, and then things like anthropology and stuff as well. But yeah, definitely social work too. And so this isn't really a use of traditional psychology tests, but more just the use of traditional sort of psychology, like measurements and things like that, or like psychology methodology. So there's more and more Indigenous sort of researchers and people in health and things like that who are using the survey methodology and using testing and things like that in a culturally appropriate way, or developing measures and tests that will be culturally appropriate for community, and using that to, like, we call them Indigenous data warriors because they're collecting data on things that we already know. So there's the Maikawai study at the Australian National University who looks at the cultural, like looks at connection to culture as a determinant of health and well-being for Indigenous peoples. And we already know as mob that that connection to culture and being able to connect with your community and celebrate your culture and things like that is good for your well-being. But they have this like huge survey of 10,000 Indigenous people, and they're putting that knowledge that we already have into this frame of evidence that non-Indigenous people take notice of and believe in. And so using things like data and testing and psychology methods to sort of advocate for ourselves and to build evidence bases that will be accepted by the Western frameworks and things like that.
That is so fun. Could you please repeat the name of the project or the researcher?
Yeah, so it's Maikawai, which is Kuwayu, and it's led by Ray Lovett at the Australian National University. There's a lot to criticise psychology for in the past and even in the more recent times, but it really is coming. Like psychology, even from when I was an undergrad, has come a long way, not just in the way that it's taught, but in research and in practice. And it's a very positive time, I think, to be involved in psychology. And it's Pat Dudgeon said once at a conference that she's a real Pollyanna about conferences, which I'll probably have to explain to the young students now. But Pollyanna was
a super upbeat person.
Yeah, very extremely optimistic. Some would say naively optimistic sometimes, storybook character. And I also, like Pat Dudgeon, am a Pollyanna about psychology. I have been very fortunate to always have people around me who have allowed me to see my space in psychology. And then since sticking around in psychology after my undergrad, I've seen that space clear out even more, that there's a lot of really good changes on the horizon. And I think as well, Indigenous perspectives can only serve to enhance the way that we do and understand psychology. It's not that we have to throw away all the things that we do. It's that bringing in different perspectives is almost always a good thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's more culturally appropriate ways to undertake research with Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people. I don't know much around Indigenous populations worldwide. I know we have similarities and differences, but I'll stick to the context I know. But that's not to say that that methodology doesn't stick with someone else as well. I'm all about providing self-determination for how people want to be seen and heard and participate in certain things. So, for example, with my recent study, I did Youngest methodology that gave people the choice to do individually in a small group, 2 to 4 people, or in a large group, 5 to 7, like a circle. I gave them the choice of it to be in person or online. I gave them over the phone. Like I tried to provide as many choices as possible to ensure that they could pick what worked for them the best and feel as comfortable as possible when we're yarning, because that's always going to give me better access to understanding their stories and asking questions around it, and they're going to share more stories, which is ideal for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. Like even what you just said, the diversity of access to the research. So, for example, in my own research, oftentimes I would be doing these online surveys. And so, I'm interested in connecting with various populations, but the reality is only people that do online surveys are going to be represented in that research. So what you're talking about is when you're working with communities, giving people options.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always provide as many options as I can for the people, not just to participate, but in clinical work as well, because we want to empower and strengthen their abilities in clinical work and their choice around how they want this to look and make people feel comfortable. And I find pro-choice is a good way to do that.
Yeah. And it's in a way, it's that you've talked in several different ways about the importance of broadening perspective and understanding you don't see everything. So asking other people, what do you see? And how that leads to insight and impact that's much bigger than if you just kind of go in with your own vibe. I think that's a really important point because, as many of our students know, in psychology, there's been this real emphasis in the last few years on the vital importance of pre-registration. And that's when you come up with your ideas and write them down ahead of time and then analyze that, stick to that, report that. And it is really important, and it addresses some of the problems we've had in the past with selective reporting. But another aspect of research that everyone encounters, every single researcher, including honors students, including PhD students, is actually you are wrong. Your ideas are wrong. And so then you need to have not just a way of reporting that they were wrong, but going beyond them. And so that 360 degrees, like asking for the people that you're studying with, asking outsiders, going beyond your own views, it's really valuable.
I think what you're saying too, Winifred, to help people as you're on your life journey, is sometimes when you've done something wrong, it's really important. Because otherwise you can keep going doing things wrong and not getting there. So it's really great when you find out that you've done something that's not right. It's like knocking at the doors until you get the right one, and also being honest and upfront with what you've done wrong. So when you write a research paper, other people can benefit from that and say, look, this is what this person did, and it didn't work, and this is why. So you know, you're actually informing the academia on and saving a lot of time and money for people by reporting your mistakes.
Exactly. And that's the file drawer problem that, you know, pre-reg and open science is supposed to overcome, like not just putting it in a drawer if it didn't work out perfectly and going on to the next thing, but really being transparent, being authentic. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, yes. Not being afraid to do that, because, you know, that's what life is about, isn't it? You know, we're warriors, you know, we're going out there and, and, you know, and it's like parenthood. Nobody teaches you.
Yeah.